Hello, everyone, and welcome to Those Who Give a Damn podcast. I am your host, Dr. Duvalier Malone, and today's conversation couldn't be more timely across Washington, D.C. People are asking hard questions. Who really has the power in the city? Who really gets, protected? Who gets ignored? And who's really making the decisions today? And so I am super excited to have my guests here who have been on the front lines for years now, fighting for our citizens here in Washington, D.C. And so without further ado, I want to welcome you, Doc, to the podcast. Welcome to Those Who Give a Damn podcast. And thank you so much for joining today. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I always like to start off the podcast this way. We all have lenses in which we've experienced the world, and those lenses really craft us to be the people in which we are. I want you to give my audience 60 seconds of who you are. Tell them your name, tell them where you're from, and tell them who you are and why you fight so hard for the residents of the District of Columbia.
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Oye Owolewa. I'm a pharmacist, former ANC commissioner. I'm the current shadow representative for DC Statehood, candidate for council at large. But that's what I do. That's not who I am. I am a child of parents who are immigrants from Nigeria who came to this country built off of, folks who fought for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, those who fought for Brown versus Board of Education, allowing Black people to desegregate schools, and those who fought for a quality of life that is only possible in America. So my parents came here, they raised a family that includes me. And the reason why I fight so hard for people in DC is because the things that you guys have done in DC allowed my story to be possible. So whether it's being a pharmacist volunteering in classrooms or fighting for statehood or now running for at-large council to rebuild a district that looks like us and for people like us is the reason and inspiration of all the work that I do for the community.
Absolutely. So you're running for councilman at large in DC in a time where the pressures are coming from every direction: public safety, housing pressure, federal interference, and the frustration from our residents who feel like the city is not listening. Why did you decide that this was the moment to run? And what do you believe this race is really about?
Yeah, so whether I was an ANC commissioner or the shadow rep that has major constrictions compared to other members of Congress, we always try to step up a little bit more. We created exposure clinics to help returning citizens get their records cleared. We did health pop-ups for free to make sure seniors are being taken care of. And most recently, we had an immigration town hall to support non-citizens who are afraid to go outside, literally because of the Trump administration. And you talked about how difficult it was for us last year with our budget being stolen from Congress, whether it's Black Lives Matter Plaza being ripped up or even seeing ICE run amok in the district. But what people were lamenting on was the fact that our leadership was oftentimes not around, not passing budgets that supported people. And at the time where I was doing all the work I was doing as a shadow rep, some of the people that I've supported turned around and said, it's your turn to step up and have that local impact. At a time where I'm supporting DC democracy throughout the country, I'm seeing our current council overturn initiatives that was passed by the people, that hurting our democracy inside the district. So a lot of those same things that I've been fighting for is one of those things that pushed me into taking this journey where, we've been able to gather a lot of support, 20 plus endorsements, and most importantly, the frustrations and the hope that I've had from, I've heard from DC residents, those who live here and those who've been displaced and left the district and try and make a better district.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this, I am actually working on a documentary about telling the everyday stories of residents in the District of Columbia. A lot of times people come here and they see the White House, they see Capitol Hill, they see all the beautiful parts of Washington, but they never really get to see the city in which we live. A lot of times people forget that we live here, we send our kids to school here, we do life here in the District of Columbia. It's
Right.
more than just a city full of politics. What I want to know is what are you hearing from everyday citizens when you talk to the residents of the district? What are they talking about? And then I want to add on a piece there to ask you not only what they're talking about, but what have you identified as the biggest gap, right? Because a lot of times I heard you what you just said that they don't see their politicians or they don't see their leaders. So what is the gap there? What are you hearing and what is the gap? Because a lot of times we hear our politicians in DC talk about the stadium. They're talking about the economy and how great DC economy is, but it's not working for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, we have a reactive government, not a proactive government. We have a government that says, come see us in the Wilson building, we will engage with you, not let's come to the community and figure things out together. Whether it's snow removal, we had a snow apocalypse, and our government waited for the ice to literally ice over and freeze over before we did much about it. We're talking about our curfew situation. We're using dangerous terminology. As a healthcare worker, I know words matter. So when we're talking about young black kids and calling them juveniles and not young people, we're setting a very uncomfortable environment for parents, for folks who live east of the river, folks who live all across the district who understand what happens when you use law enforcement words for teenage activity. We're seeing that right now, DC has the highest in unemployment, 7% across the district, but even upwards of 20% in certain communities like my own in Congress Heights. And we're not seeing any type of industry attraction that could rehire people to the standards that they were used to. Building a stadium alone is not going to help the FDA director who got laid off, the USAID workers who lost their job overnight. We need to find ways to bring real industries to help people afford to pay their bills because we can try and make rent as cheap as possible, but if someone doesn't have income, they're not going to be able to sustain themselves in DC. So right now, people in DC are not only complaining about the issues that affect them day to day, they're also complaining about a government that just doesn't see them as worthy. We're seeing a budget that cuts healthcare, but creates billion-dollar subsidies for a stadium. That's not what DC residents deserve. And we need leadership that not only pays attention to people, but also pay attention to data as well. So we're not following poll numbers, we're following things that actually work.
When you say data, what is the data showing you right now that is really scaring you as you get ready to take on, if you are elected into, when you're elected into that seat? What is the data showing you, and what solutions do you are proposing to make the life better for residents? Because I hear a lot of times from residents across the District of Columbia, in particular Ward 7 and 8, they're saying that we hear these same empty promises every cycle, but nobody never really gets to the meat and potato of what their struggle really is.
For sure. When I was doing my expungement clinics, we had folks who were in prison for multiple years. We have young folks who are trying to change their lives around, especially as they face discrimination in terms of housing and employment upon reentry. And one of the things I've come to learn was a lot of people who got caught up in the juvenile correctional justice system struggled with literacy. Talking about 70% of young offenders don't read at reading at grading level. Sorry, I got tripped up over words. And when you're looking at the data, and about 35% of people from third grade to fifth grade read at grading level, but it drops soon after, it shows the true opportunity to invest in literacy, whether it's my friend Jimmy at Washington Literacy Center or other organizations, just making sure young people, regardless of where they live or what they look like, are at least reading at a fourth or fifth grade level. We've seen that as determined that allows them to live the quality lives that they want to live. They can actually be functionally literate and make sure that they're not falling into the traps that gets them into incarceration. Number two, I don't want to create waves on your show, but if you look at the data, teen curfews do not work. Now, do I want kids outside at 11 o'clock at night? No. But if a young person has a lot of energy at 11 o'clock, it usually means they're not doing anything between 3 and 10, right? They're not working. They're not having an after school program. They're not in sports. And at a time where our budget is cutting funding from DPR and beyond, but adding more funding for policing and DYRS, it really shows where our priorities are. And when we have council members talking about keeping our communities safe, it sounds like a dog whistle against Black people. So really focus on data, showing that programs really work, Having adults there that are not police can really calm young people down. And seeing a police presence of 70 or 80 people, which I saw at the last Teen Spring Gym because I was there, oftentimes frightens young people and creates the kind of chaos that a lot of people in the community are afraid of seeing. So going back to data, not just listening to the squeakiest wheel in the room, really allows us to actually find solutions. 3 months ago, the council said we're going to pass an emergency curfew, and a few months we're going to create solutions. It's now April. There are no solutions. So using the data to find solutions, in my opinion, and being a more proactive government actually leads to much better results rather than waiting for things to go chaotic and now calling for police who were already quote unquote facing a shortage of, now focusing on that and not on domestic violence, not on overdoses on the street, not on making sure people are safe and not making sure that car accidents aren't happening. Instead, we're putting them in a Navy Yard patrolling grass. That's not good use of our money, and that's not good use of our time. And once we get data driven, we'll be able to be a lot more efficient with our government so we can afford the housing programs, the school opportunities that we actually right now can't afford because they're so bloated in the way we're doing things reactively.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to talk to you about as well is we know that as the administration is here, we've been in Washington long enough to realize the administrations are going to change, the city is going to change. But the people who live here and call DC home, for them, they shouldn't be in the middle of this political fight, right? So, what is your recommendation as it relates to the home rule? What do we need to do? What the citizens need to know to be informed around that? I mean, I know we're fighting for DC to be the 51st state. We've been in that conversation for some years now, but I really want to know what is your vision, your ideas, and your plans that we need to do to protect ourselves in DC as administrations come and go? Because what we're seeing now, a lot of people didn't imagine this, it would be this bad, but it has. And with that being said, what do we need to do to protect ourselves, everyday citizens and residents who live here in the District of Columbia?
Yeah, that's a tremendous question. What we've seen is what happens when we're overly dependent on the federal government, whether it's for our money, whether it's for our jobs. And we saw the current Trump administration just upend that. So we need to be more independent. And what I mean by more independent is bringing other industries like USAID employees that could work out, whether it's businesses that are dominating Manhattan right now, bring them to DC, where it's actually kind of cheaper to do business in DC compared to Manhattan. And we have a huge talent pool that's looking for the right opportunity. We also have to make sure that I hate to say this, but we also have to open up our minds, open up our vision. So small things like snow could be removed during the snowstorm, not waiting for to coalesce afterwards. We have to make UDC tuition free so young people can be pipelined into careers without the saddling student debt. Right now, district residents owe the highest in student debt, about $55,000 per person. That keeps us from buying a home. That keeps us from creating a business. That keeps us from starting families. Now, at a time where birth rates are going lower and lower and lower in DC is tied to the economy. So making sure that DC residents not only are more independent of the federal government, but we're also holding our business partners accountable. Right now, Clark Construction, one of DC's biggest construction partners, is building an ICE facility in Ward 8 right across the street from where I live. A company that's getting $3 billion a year from DC and outer DC locations is taking hundreds of $1 millions from ICE. And we see what ICE is doing in DC, and we see how much uprising we're having over ICE. We shouldn't have our closest partners working with the other side. You gotta work with us or you can work with them. And at a time when we have no kings rallies and we have so many people tweeting and talking about their feelings about ICE, we should be able to hold our business partners more accountable. And as a council member, we not only pass laws, not only do oversight, but we also have power of the budget. And we need to make sure that our partners are working with us. And if they're not working with us, we find new business partners. We have power in the city. It's time for us to flex it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more about UDC. I am an alumni from UDC. I got my PhD from there, and it's one of the most amazing institutions of higher learning in the DMV on the East Coast, but it is a hidden secret. And so, if elected, when elected, I'm going to hold you accountable to that. We need visibility. Students in the District of Columbia should, when I'm from Mississippi, born and raised in Fayette, Mississippi. So we all knew what Alcorn State University was. I have taught pathway students who they've heard of UDC, but not the depth of the school, right? So we all knew Alcorn State University was an option, right? And so the University of the District of Columbia, it has to be a priority. They need to engage with high schools and recruit students because we have thousands of high school students who graduate but do not come to the District of Columbia. That should be a guaranteed enrollment, right? And so we definitely got to take a look into that for sure. I got two more points I want to make really quickly here too is I want to talk about food insecurity. Food
Yeah.
insecurity is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to across the district, but I am hearing on the ground a lot of my adult learners that I teach and I engage with, I'm working on a documentary, as I told you about, they talk about how they can't afford groceries. They talk about how it's taking them a long time to get to a grocery store in Ward 7, in Ward 8. A lot of students are reported to come to school hungry, right? In one of the most richest, powerful cities in the world. So we have the mayor bragging about bond ratings and our funding in the district. But students are going to school hungry and maybe the only meal that they may get. What is your vision for combating food insecurity here in the District of Columbia?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because I'm not just speaking as this as a candidate. I'm also speaking as a Ward 8 resident who lives across the street from the only grocery store that people know in this area, the Giant. And there were talks about that pharmacy and that store actually closing down. And that would be devastating towards our community. We need more grocery stores, but we also need more farmers markets and more pop-ups. And the barrier to entry into becoming a food supplier is so high that a lot of the folks in Ward A who have gardens just can't get there to that point. So I actually talked to a couple of folks who serve food or bring food to farmers markets, and they actually talked about the importance of having more nonprofit commercial kitchens. Now, I'll explain a little bit more for the audience who may not understand what a commercial kitchen is. So, for places that don't have brick and mortar locations like a Bus Boys and Poets or a Roof Chris, a lot of them share a kitchen space. So that's where they prepare their food, take care of their produce, bring it to a farmer's market. Now, a lot of these for-profit corporate commercial spaces could still be about $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which could be cost prohibitive for someone who's getting into this market. So if we had more nonprofit locations that may, instead of being 3,000, maybe 500 to 1,000, then we'll get a lot more opportunities to come to this side of DC. It's not going to be easy to find that footprint to build a new location. There might not be a lot of funding from the government to assist in the remodeling, but if you can get somebody to be out there on a Saturday or a Sunday, maybe create a program like food is health, so they can use their insurance to purchase some food. That can make a huge difference. I was by Martha's Table the other day, and what used to be a line of 4 or 5 people by that food pantry is now like 35, 40, 50 people. They do a lot of great work, but I'm really concerned of what happens if they run out of capacity. So we want to find other opportunities to spread free food around or even low cost food around before we tap too much in Martha's Table or before they close their doors at certain times. We really need to find ways to make sure young people are fed because if you're hungry, you're not learning. You know this, Dr. Malone. If you're not learning, then you're not reading well. If you're not reading well, that cycle goes down. It's not just public schools. Charter schools are feeling the same hit. So we need a budget that doesn't put charter schools against public schools, put communities against communities, parents against other parents. We need to find a ways to make sure there's real equity in this community. Because if we're sneezing in Ward 7, Ward 8, Ward 5, and Ward 4, then Ward 2 and Ward 3 are going to get hit too. And we're all in this together.
Absolutely. I know that story so well. I grew up in poverty in Mississippi to a single mother, and my teachers thought that I needed to be put in special education because I wasn't comprehending. It wasn't because I had a learning disability. It was because that I was worried whether or not I would have food when I got back home because sometimes we didn't have food. And thanks to the Catholic charities and other community partners to bring my mom, I would never forget, boxes of food so that we could have food to eat in that trailer in Mississippi. So I know how important that is and how it affects education. I also want to shout out UDC causes, right? They're doing a lot of good work with having those community gardens and working in the community growing produce. And so again, I'm looking at you when elected, we're going to hold you accountable. We want more funding into UDC, right? So
We're
that
gonna work
UDC
together.
can yes,
You're gonna be at
we
that
want
table,
more.
brother. No, no, you're not gonna be holding me come. You're gonna be next to me. So when I'm getting yelled at, you're getting yelled at too. And we're working together. We're gonna figure this out together too. So, and when they're praising me, I'm like, nah, Dr. Malone was over here doing all the work. I'm just taking the picture on stage.
Listen, I'm so serious about that. Like a lot of great work is happening. Causes UDC is doing that great work, but they need more funding to expand that work. One of the things here I want to bring up here as well is a lot of people are tired. They've heard the same promises every cycle, but their rent is still high, right? Their schools are still under pressure. Their neighborhoods are changing, and the trust in government is really low. How do you rebuild trust with residents who feel like the city government has almost done absolutely nothing from them? They've been unresponsive and not brave enough. What do you do?
Yeah, I can only do what I've already been doing. You're talking about someone who's born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. Name is obviously African, and I live in Southeast Washington, D.C. So the birthplace of most of these native Washingtonians. So I'm used to going into rooms. They're like, I don't know you, I don't like you. And I tell them, I ain't going nowhere. And within time, the consistency, being reliable, that does the talking, not just good words. And we've been able to mobilize returning citizens, business owners, entrepreneurs, native Washingtonians and not, people of different races based off the work that we've done. And being on the council will be an extension of that work. We're not here to just bloviate and say what people want to hear. We're ready to actually put in real specific things we want to do and have a pipeline and have a plan to get it done. I didn't go over here and just say, hey, I want to make schools better. I said we need young people reading at a fourth or fifth grade level. I didn't just say, hey, we need to make life more affordable in DC. I said we need to make UDC tuition free. As a pharmacist, I understand the importance of healthcare, and we need folks who understand insurance complexities to make sure we bring the costs down and not kick people off of their insurance. At a time that we have a hospital in Ward 8 that's going through its challenges, we need council members who understand these things that can come in and ask the right questions. So when I was talking to Dr. Tony Coleman, the previous CEO, and he was saying that we have so many jobs when people who live in Ward 7, Ward 8, I asked him the follow-up question, how many of them are full-time? He had to get back to me. And he never did. Those are the things that's important because when you ask the right questions and when you have the expertise and when you are, most importantly, are reliable and consistent, that's when people can trust the work that you're doing. I didn't win these races in DC because my name is easy to pronounce. I won it based off the work and the relationships that we've been able to get. But I'm also not afraid of being wrong. I'm not afraid of speaking my truth and someone says, hey, you're off brand right here. We work together to figure this out. I'm not going to be the person that runs away from an uncomfortable conversation. I live in Congress Heights. It's really important to make sure that you're reliable, that you're consistent, that you're honest about what you feel, and you don't shy away from uncomfortable conversations. You didn't ask me about the teen curfew, but I know the teen curfew is one of the biggest conversations in DC right now, and people in DC deserve to hear what I think about it. I don't think the teen curfew is going to work. I don't think it's designed to work. I also believe that it's going to encourage folks who want to be rebellious to challenge officers, National Guard and beyond. I believe the best thing we need to do is engage young people proactively rather than trying to punish them reactively. Because 5 or 6 kids should not be what's used as an example for thousands of others that go into an event to have a good time. We need to make sure young people can be safe. We need to make sure that the community feels welcome in these conversations. We also need to make sure that parents are given assistance, whether they can be there to chaperone, whether we support them with higher paying jobs, so they have to work 2, 3 jobs and leave their kids at home the entire day, or just try to find ways to not demonize them and their kids based off of the circumstances that they happen to be in. Poverty should not be criminalized. Lack of a second parent in the house should not be demonized. We have to support people. And that comes with the languages we use, that comes with the support we give, that also comes with attention and conversations and being with people like you, Dr. Malone, who get it from lived experiences, but also be on the other side of now being a role model to folks that look just like us who are in their teenage years.
My last question to you before we get into the complete the sentence segment. What is one thing DC leaders are not saying loud enough right now? What is one thing DC leaders are not saying loud enough right now?
DC leaders don't have everyone's back. Our budget right now puts too many people against each other. And I understand that we have a shortage, right? We understand that there's fewer DC residents working. But our budget and our priorities isn't filling those gaps. It's just taking what's rest and going from there. Our budget has increased 50% in the last 7 or 8 years, and there's been no substantial improvement in quality of life. What DC residents are not hearing from their leaders is, we hear you, we respect you, we want to listen to you, and we want to give you the agency to figure out what's next. I believe once we provide that spirit, that faith, that confidence back in DC residents, by and large, we can figure this out together. But right now, we don't really have an at-large council member that can mobilize the entire district, having Ward 8 conversations in Ward 2, having Ward 3 conversations in Ward 7, having Ward 1 conversations in Ward 5, because we are all kind of feeling similar things. I went to a development conversation in Ward 8, and developers told the community, take it or leave it, and everyone was upset. Then I went to Chevy Chase in Ward 3, one of the wealthiest areas in DC, and we were at a rec center, and the developer said, take it or leave it. And they were both just as angry. So if Ward 3 people and Ward 8 people are feeling the exact same way for opposite reasons and the opposite demographics, then there should be a conversation with the at-large council members. How do we bring everybody together to feel less polarized and we can actually figure out these situations together? Because that's the most healthy way to heal and rebuild our district.
Awesome. Less than complete the sentence here. My hope for the future of Washington, D.C. My hope for the future of Washington, D.C. is
My hope for the future of Washington, D.C. is that we are more connected.
awesome. Tell people how to get in contact with you and how to get involved in the work that you're doing here in the city.
To get more involved with me, go to my website, vote number 4oye.com, vote4oye.com. Our social media is Rep Oye DC, REPOYED. REPOYEDC, or at the very least, just come outside because I'm probably not too far away. I got signs everywhere. If you want a yard sign, you can reach out to me. But most importantly, if you like what you see, please consider contributing as little as $5 to be matched. But more importantly, talk to your friends about the work that we do. Let us know if there's something on the website that you don't like. I have dozens of conversations every day, and believe it or not, some of the more constructive feedback has actually helped shape this campaign, shaped our vision. We have 19 issues on our website, including accessibility, affordable housing, public safety, our healthcare. But we even got into the weeds of sustainability, all because of people leaning in and talking about their frustrations, but also their hopes. This is not my campaign. It is not my name on the ballot. It's everybody's name on the ballot. We are covering every single ward. We're covering every single neighborhood and population group because that's how we're going to get these things done. For a healthy DC, running for a stable DC, running for the DC that you deserve.
Thank you so much again for joining us. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you out there in the next weeks to come. We got a lot of work to do ahead of us, and it's going to be a busy couple of weeks here in the city ahead of June, right?
Absolutely, brother. I'll see you out there.